If I had arrived at her door just 10 seconds later, I wouldn't be alive to tell you this, because the sweetest woman on our street, the one everyone trusted, was quietly turning her neighbors into trophies. And the night she picked me, I didn't even realize I was stepping into a murderer's workshop until I felt the needle sink into my neck. That summer, I was 16 and staying with my mom's younger sister, Aunt Denise, in a small town called Maple Hollow, up in Washington State. My parents were in the middle of a nuclear divorce. They tried to hide it for years, whispered arguments in the kitchen, fake smiles at holidays. "We're just worn out, sweetie." But then it escalated, fights that shook the house, glass breaking, doors slamming hard enough to crack the frame. One night they sat me down, faces tight. "You're going to stay with Aunt Denise for a while," my mom said. "For the summer," my dad added. "Just until we figure things out." So I ended up in Maple Hollow. Quiet streets, pine trees. The houses were old and the paint was peeling. No friends, no cousins, just me and an aunt who worked from home and microwaved everything she ate. The only intriguing thing on our street was the woman next door. Her name was Mrs. Lillian Ward, mid-50s. Hair always pinned back perfectly. She was always dressed in a dress or a pressed blouse, never in sweatpants. She had this soft, charming voice and a way of locking onto you with full eye contact that made you feel special, important. People on the street loved her. "Lillian throws the best little parties," Aunt Denise said one evening, looking out the kitchen window. "Wine nights, book clubs, charity things. She's very cultured." I didn't care at first. I was too busy sulking, listening to music, and stalking my old friends online, but I was lonely. And Lillian noticed. It started small. She caught me checking the mail one morning. "You must be Denise's niece," she called, stepping off her porch. "You look just like your mother did at your age." I'd never met her before. That should have bothered me more than it did. She invited me over for tea anytime. A week later, boredom won. I knocked. Her house felt like a museum. There were mounted animal heads on the walls, deer, antelope, and something with twisted horns I didn't recognize. Glass cases filled with strange carved masks. Furs draped over chairs and benches like expensive blankets. "My late husband was a hunter," she told me, smiling sadly. "He traveled the world, South Africa, Argentina, Mongolia. He brought me a little piece of everywhere he went." I tried to act impressed, but honestly it creeped me out. Still, I kept going back. She listened when I talked about my parents, about the divorce, and about how much I hated everything. Most adults just gave advice. "Lillian, just listen. You're very mature for your age," she'd say, pouring more tea. "Very self-aware. That's rare. And when you're 16 and broken, that kind of attention is addictive." There was another neighbor on the street too, Mr. Harris, across from Lillian's house. Late 60s, always sitting on his porch with a mug of coffee that never seemed to empty. He barely spoke, just watched. Aunt Denise told me he's harmless. Lost his brother years ago. Keeps to himself. Don't bother him and he won't bother you. So I didn't at first. One afternoon at Lillian's, I asked to use her bathroom. On the way back, I noticed a door at the end of the hall, just barely open. Inside, the light was dim. The lighting in that room was different from the rest of the house. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. It was full of fur. It was more than just a rug or two. Every surface was covered. Furs hung from ceiling hooks, stacks of folded hides on wooden tables, pieces draped over mannequins and headless forms. The air was thick, heavy, and too warm. I reached out and ran my fingers over one. It didn't feel like any fur I'd ever touched. Too smooth, too soft, almost wrong. "Beautiful, aren't they?" I was on the verge of exploding. Lillian stood behind me, smiling. She maintained the same warm expression as always, but her eyes, they looked different, brighter, sharper. "My husband was an artist," she said, stepping past me into the room. "He believed some things deserved to last forever. He taught me everything he knew." My mouth went dry. I nodded like I understood. I didn't. That night I couldn't sleep. That room wouldn't leave my head. Those furs, that smell, that feeling. The next day I caught Mr. Harris staring at me again from his porch as I walked back from Lillian's. I tried to ignore him, but as I passed, he did something he'd never done before. He stood up. His eyes flicked from me to Lillian's house. Then he lifted his hand and pointed directly at her front door. "Stay away," he muttered. I stopped. "What?" He shook his head like he regretted saying anything and went back. Inside that night, Aunt Denise told me I'd be going home soon. My flight's booked for next weekend, she said. Your parents said things are calmer now. I should have been excited. Instead, my stomach twisted. The next morning, I went to tell Lillian I'd be leaving. Her face fell. Oh, that's such a shame, she said, pulling me into a hug I didn't really want. Come by tonight for one last tea, all right, a proper goodbye. Every part of me said no. My mouth said okay. That evening, just as I stepped onto her porch, someone grabbed my wrist. I spun around, heart slamming in my chest. Mr. Harris. His grip was stronger than I expected, his eyes wild. Go in, he hissed. Let go of me, I snapped, trying to yank my arm back. He leaned closer, breath shaking, like he was forcing the words out through some invisible wall. She keeps them, he whispered. She keeps them all. What are you talking about? He shoved something into my hand, crumpled paper, damp with sweat, and stumbled back toward his house without another word. Shaking, I unfolded the note. Messy handwriting, scrawled hard enough to tear through in places. She took my brother. I was supposed to be first. You're supposed to be next. My blood ran cold. Behind me, Lillian's front door creaked open. Sweetheart, her warm voice called. Why are you standing out there? Come in, it's chilly. I couldn't breathe. My brain screamed. Run. My feet didn't listen. I turned, forcing a smile. Sorry, just thinking. I took one step toward her. That's when I felt it, sharp and sudden, like a hornet's sting in my neck. I gasped, reaching up, fingers fumbling against something metallic before my arm went heavy and useless. The world tilted sideways. The porch light smeared into streaks of yellow. There, Lillian murmured, catching me as my knees buckled. It'll be over soon. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me was the glint of a long, thin blade on the hallway table. I woke up freezing. My arms ached. My skin felt exposed, raw. Something rough dug into my wrists, rope tight and unforgiving. I tried to move and pain shot up my shoulders. The room smelled like chemicals and something coppery, the fur room. Only now could I see everything. Some of the furs had tattoos, faded ink, freckles, scars. These are human details, details no animal should possess. I started screaming. Lillian stepped into view, calm as ever, wiping her hands on a towel. You have such lovely skin, Ava, she said softly. So smooth, so unmarked. I knew from the moment I saw you. She lifted the knife. Worry, she whispered. I'll make you last forever. She brought the blade to my arm, pressing just enough to sting. I thrashed against the restraints, ropes burning into my skin. Then a deafening boom shattered the air. The door behind her exploded inward. Wood splintered. Lillian jerked, stumbling. Mr. Harris stood in the doorway, shotgun braced against his shoulder, eyes blazing. Get away from her, he roared. Lillian turned, knife still in hand, lips pulling back from her teeth in something that wasn't a smile. He fired again. She dropped. In seconds, he was at my side, hands shaking as he fumbled with the knots. Move, he barked when the ropes came loose. Now, I stumbled to my feet, legs trembling so hard I could barely walk. He practically dragged me down the hall and out the back door. Sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flashed against the trees. Aunt Denise's face is the last thing I remember before I blacked out again, white with shock, eyes flooded with tears. The police found everything, the tools. The stretched hides were discovered. The collection includes old ID cards, jewelry, a notebook with names and dates that went back years. Lillian wasn't just some classy neighbor. She was a collector. Mr. Harris had survived her once, years ago. She took his brother instead. No one believed him back then. So he watched her, waited, and when he realized I was next, he did the one thing he hadn't managed to do for his brother. He stopped her. I went back home eventually. My parents pretended their divorce hadn't nearly destroyed me. They were careful with their words around me after that, careful with their voices, careful with their anger, but nothing went back to normal. Because now, every time an older woman smiles at me in a grocery store, or a kind neighbor waves from their porch, my heart skips. I don't see friendly faces anymore. I see furs on a wall that was never meant to be there. I hear a calm voice saying, "I'll make you last forever." And I remember that in the quietest neighborhoods, behind the warmest smiles, the darkest monsters are the ones who look exactly like the people you trust. My neighbor screamed every night, but the night she stopped screaming was the night she died. And the worst part, I was the reason she went insane. People say you never really know the person living next door. But I knew. I knew exactly what I was doing to her. And I still didn't stop. I never paid much attention to my neighbors before. You nod at them, maybe exchange a polite wave, then go about your day. But after what happened on Willow Bend Lane, I've learned one thing. A neighbor's life can be destroyed with just a little push. When I moved into my new place in Crestview Heights, I wanted peace. I needed it. A breakup had left me hollow, drained, and desperate for a quiet life to rebuild myself. The house I bought was small and older but comforting in its own way. A little garden, a small porch, and a detached garage. For the first time in years, I finally felt like I had space to breathe. My neighbor, Miss Harriet Lowe, lived right next door. She was in her mid-40s, thin, jittery, and always muttering to herself. Her hair looked like she cut it with dull scissors, and her clothes were always wrinkled, like she had slept in them. The first week I moved in, I heard her screaming. Not just loud screaming, the kind that chills your spine and makes you freeze because it doesn't sound human. I ran outside along with everyone else on the street. Harriet stood on her porch sobbing. Her hair was uneven, jagged, and hacked apart. Clumps were scattered all over the ground. She kept saying someone broke into her house and cut her hair while she slept. But the police found nothing, no forced entry, nothing moved inside, no signs of anyone else. Everyone shook their heads. A poor woman's losing it, they whispered. She needs help. But here's the truth. I was the one who started it. Not intentionally, not at first. You see, the house Harriet lived in, it used to belong to someone I cared about, someone who loved me. That person, however, has since left. Someone who made me promise I'd keep the place safe. When Harriet bought it, she ruined that promise, and I couldn't let that happen. It started small. I'd move things on her porch, shift her garden gnomes, leave her gate open at night. Nothing crazy, just enough to unsettle her. I wanted her to feel uncomfortable, unwelcome. I wanted her to leave. But then she reacted worse than I expected. Night after night, she'd scream about shadows watching her, voices whispering in her hallway, and hands touching her hair while she slept. She'd call the police. They'd arrive, find nothing, and tell her to calm down. Every time they left, she looked more broken. And I should have stopped. But I didn't. Because she refused to move out, and I wasn't finished. One night, her screams reached another level: terror, not paranoia. I ran outside with the rest of the neighbors. Harriet was crouched in the middle of her yard, shaking violently. In her hand was a severed finger, her own. Blood dripped down her arm, staining the grass. She kept sobbing, "They took it, they took it, someone took it." However, she was responsible for her own actions. The police took her away. She might have been placed on a psych hold, a hospital. I didn't know, and I told myself I didn't care. The street was quiet for 3 days. But then at 2:17 a.m., I heard it. There was a single, sharp, blood-curdling scream. Then nothing. Not crying. Not footsteps. Not doors. Just silence. I was the first one to reach her house. The front door was open. The living room light flickered. Harriet lay on the floor, collapsed beside an overturned chair. A long kitchen knife was stuck straight into her chest. Blood pooled around her like thick oil. Her eyes were open. She was frozen in horror. The neighbors gasped. Someone called 911. Someone whispered. She finally snapped. But I didn't say a word, because I knew the truth. I pushed her to this. The detectives found a handwritten note on her coffee table. A messy, paranoid ramble about shadows following her, voices whispering in her hair, and monsters crawling up the walls. Exactly what I needed. 2 days later, the headline appeared. Local woman dies after months of mental decline. Authorities suspect suicide. No one suspected me. No one even considered foul play. They thought she cut her hair, killed her cat, severed her finger, and stabbed herself. But she didn't. She never understood what I was doing to her. And I never meant to kill her. I just wanted her gone. Everyone on the street felt relieved. People slept easier. The neighborhood felt peaceful again. But me. Sometimes I wake up at night hearing her scream. Occasionally, I feel eyes on me when I walk past her old house. And sometimes, when I turn off the lights, I see her in the corner of my room. Hair jagged, eyes wide, hands trembling. I've pushed the woman to the limit. The neighbor whose life I destroyed. The neighbor persists in refusing to leave me alone. The first time my neighbor stared at me through my bedroom window, I thought it was a mistake. The second time, I shut my curtains. But the third time, I realized he wasn't staring at me at all. He was staring at something behind me. I never really noticed my neighbors until I moved into my apartment on Birchwell Street. It was an old brick building, the kind where the elevator groans and the hallways smell like dust and old carpet. But it was cheap. And after my breakup, cheap was all I cared about. Across from my window in the building facing mine lived a man I'd never spoken to, Mr. Allen, in his mid-50s and balding, with deep lines carved into his face like he carried years of silent anger. He never smiled, never waved, he never even glanced up in response to greetings. But he watched. The first night I noticed him, I had just moved in. I was unpacking in my bedroom when I felt eyes on me. It was not my imagination. I felt an actual, cold, prickling sensation creeping up my neck. I turned. He was standing at his window directly across from mine, staring straight into my room. He didn't move, didn't blink. He did not avert his gaze. I jumped back and tugged the blinds shut, heart racing. Maybe he didn't realize I saw him. Maybe he wasn't even looking at me. But the next night he was there again. Same window, same spot. The same expressionless stare persisted. I started keeping my curtains closed most of the time. But it didn't matter. The feeling of being watched seeped through the walls, through the floor, and through my chest. One afternoon, as I walked to my car, he stepped outside for the first time since I moved in, slow, stiff, like his joints ached. Evening, I murmured politely. He didn't answer. He just turned his head slowly, mechanically, and looked at me with eyes so dark and hollow I felt my stomach twist. Then he whispered something I did understand. "You shouldn't be in that apartment." I froze. What? But he had already turned away, shuffling back into his building. That night the knocking started, soft, rhythmic tapping on the shared wall between my bedroom and living room. 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. I moved into the hallway and pressed my ear against the wall. Silence. When I stepped away, tap, tap, tap. The sound came from inside my apartment this time. My throat tight. I checked the closets, the bathroom. I looked under the bed, but found nothing. But the knocking continued every night after that. I filed a complaint with the landlord, but he just shrugged. "That building is old. Pipes make noise, don't worry." But I wasn't imagining it. A week later, things escalated. I woke up at 3:14 a.m. to a faint whispering behind my bedroom door. A thin voice, almost childlike, saying my name. Alice. My chest locked. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The whispering continued for almost a minute until I forced myself to get up. I opened the door. Nothing, but the closet door, the one I always kept fully shut, was open just an inch. I slammed it shut and didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I found a piece of paper slid under my door, a torn magazine page. The face of a woman on the cover had been scribbled out with black ink, and under it someone had written in shaky letters, "Look behind you." My legs buckled. I checked my apartment from top to bottom. Still nothing. That evening, my phone buzzed while I sat frozen on my couch, trying to convince myself to leave. Unknown number. Stop looking. I dropped the phone. My heart thundered loud enough to drown out my thoughts. I grabbed my keys. I needed fresh air, people around, anything but this place. As I opened the door, Mr. Allen was standing in the hallway across from my apartment. Just standing there, staring directly at me. He looked terrified, not of me, but of the inside of my apartment. He lifted a shaking hand and pointed. "Go back in," he whispered. "Ever go back in?" I forced out, "What is in there?" He swallowed hard. "I don't know, but it's been watching you for weeks." My entire body went numb. "I saw it," he whispered, voice cracking. "Behind you." The incident occurred at the window more than once. A cold weight dropped in my stomach. "What did you see?" I choked. He shook his head violently. "Something that wasn't human." Before I could speak, a loud crash exploded from inside my apartment, like furniture overturning. Mr. Allen flinched. "Run," he said, and for once I listened. We sprinted down the hallway as the whispers started again, this time louder, clearer. "Alice, don't leave." We tore down the stairs and burst out into the parking lot, both of us shaking. Mr. Allen dropped to his knees, gasping for air. "What is happening?" I cried, his voice cracked. "You weren't the first tenant there. The others," he swallowed. "They left, but not through the door. Police were called. They searched my apartment. They didn't find anything unusual, but my bed was upside down, my closet is wide open, and my curtains shredded like something had clawed straight through the fabric." The landlord tried to play it off as vandalism. I didn't stay long enough to argue. I packed in daylight, shaking the whole time. Mr. Allen watched from his window, but this time he wasn't staring at me. He was staring at my closet. I moved out that afternoon. But last night in my new apartment, my phone buzzed at 3:14 a.m. Unknown number. "I found you." And then tap, 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 3 knocks, a pause, 3 more. The words are written on the inside of my wall. I was seconds away from locking my front door when I realized someone else had a copy of my entire routine. My job hours, my walking routes, my nights alone. Nothing about what happened to me was random. Someone next door planned it, and they planned it for months. I've always delivered medical supplies for a living. It's not glamorous, just me, a cargo van, and hours of nighttime driving across quiet highways. I liked the solitude. I liked the peace. Until the night my neighbor ruined it. Back then, I rented a small duplex on the edge of Red Mesa, New Mexico. My unit was on the left. The right side was occupied by a man named Derek Cole, a quiet guy in his mid-40s who worked construction. Or at least, that's what he said. He was rarely home during the day, always left early, and always came back late. He barely spoke. But I'd catch him watching me occasionally. Too long. Too intensely. I brushed it off. I had worse things to stress about: rent, weather, and long shifts. On this particular December night, I left for my usual overnight route. I took a 2-hour drive towards the east, dropped supplies at a small clinic, grabbed gas, come back. Routine, simple, predictable. But that night, something felt off the moment I left. 2 blocks from home, a black pickup turned behind me. At first, I didn't think much, but as I drove onto Highway 18, it stayed behind me. It followed me through every turn I made, every lane I switched, every slowdown. It stayed. My skin prickled. I checked my mirrors, nothing unusual. It was just a standard lifted truck, dusty, big tires. There were no visible plates on the vehicle. But the way it moved, it seemed to anticipate my braking before I even pressed the pedal. By the time I reached the stretch of empty desert highway, my heart was racing. Still behind me. I tried to shake it, sped up, switched lanes. I executed 3 slowdowns in the vicinity of mile marker 74. Still there. When I reached the lone gas station in Red Mesa, the truck kept going past me. Relief washed over me. I delivered the supplies, made small talk with the night nurse, grabbed a terrible gas station coffee, and headed back. Halfway home, my headlights caught something in the ditch on the right side, a long skid mark. Fresh. My stomach tightened. Then the truck's headlights appeared behind me again. Closer and closer. They kept getting closer until they were almost touching my bumper. I gripped the wheel. Back off, I muttered uselessly. The truck rammed me. My cargo van swerved violently, tires screaming against the asphalt. I fought hard to keep control. He rammed me again. My heart nearly exploded. Why me? What did I do? I floored it, engine roaring, but the truck stayed inches behind me. I could see the driver now through the mirror. A man, baseball cap, face shadowed. No fear, no hesitation. Just focus on me. I took the next exit so fast my tires skidded. The truck followed, no delay. That's when panic turned into terror. He knew where I'd turn. He knew where I'd drive. He knew my routine. He'd planned this. Then a horrifying thought stabbed through me. My neighbor, Derek. He watched me leave every night. He knew my route. He knew my schedule. My hands shook as I gripped the wheel. I sped toward my street, hoping I could outrun him. But as soon as I turned into my neighborhood, the truck peeled off into the dark desert like it had never been there. I flew into my driveway and stumbled out of the van, still shaking. Derek's house was dark, no truck in sight. I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was just some crazy drunk idiot. But the next morning, when I stepped outside, there were tire tracks across my driveway. Same thick, heavy tread pattern as the black pickup S. My blood ran cold. Derek stepped out of his house right then, like he'd been waiting. "Did you get home late last night?" he asked casually. "Yeah," I said quietly, measuring his tone. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was aware. "You take that Highway 18 route every night, right? Same stops, same time." His voice was too smooth, too confident. "Why?" I asked. He shrugged. Just noticed. The next night I left for work early, trying to shake the pattern. I chose a different route out of town. I stopped at a different gas station. Different timing. But halfway through my altered route, the same black pickup appeared behind me. I choked on my breath. He wasn't reacting to my schedule. He was anticipating it. The truck hit me harder this time, shoving my van toward the guardrail. Sparks flew. The wheel jerked out of my hands. I screamed. He rammed again. I veered off, swerving into an emergency turnout. The truck did a slow U-turn and idled across from me, headlights blinding, engine rumbling like a predator waiting for me to make a move. I didn't. I just stared, frozen, breath fogging the air. Then he drove away. When I limped home, at dawn, Derek was sitting on his porch drinking coffee, even though he'd never been up that early before. "You're late today," he said, like he knew the exact minute I should have walked in. That was the moment I stopped doubting, stopped trying to be logical. Derek wasn't watching me. He was studying me. 2 nights later, I found a folded piece of paper wedged under my windshield. No name, no signature. Just 6 words. "Stop changing your route. It's annoying." I packed everything I owned the next morning. I refrained from informing the landlord. Didn't tell Derek. Didn't tell anyone on Willow Bend Lane. When the moving truck pulled away, I didn't look back. And now, months later, in a city hundreds of miles away, I still check my rearview mirror at every red light. I still jump whenever a truck drives too close behind me. Because 2 weeks ago, just past midnight, I walked out of my new job, got in my car, and as my headlights lit the parking lot, A black pickup rolled by slowly. The same heavy tires. The truck's body was still covered in dust. The engine continued to rev silently. And when it passed me, there was a note tucked under my windshield wiper. 6 words. I still know your route. Every night at 2:13 a.m., the boy in my neighbor's window stared into my room. But the neighbor didn't have a son. The night he finally waved at me, I realized he wasn't waving at me. He was warning me. I moved into Hazel Ridge Apartments 3 months ago thinking I'd finally found a peaceful place to start over. After a messy breakup, I needed quiet, no drama, no roommates. The apartment was affordable and offered a fresh start. My unit faced the neighboring building, specifically apartment 12B, directly across from my bedroom window. It was always dark, curtains always drawn. I assumed the place was empty. Until the night I woke up at 2:13 a.m. My room felt unusually cold, like someone had opened a freezer door. I sat up, rubbing my arms, and that's when I noticed a faint glow from the window across the courtyard. Apartment 12B. A small light flickered on, revealing a silhouette in the window. A child, maybe 10 or 11 years old. A boy. He stood perfectly still, face turned toward my room as if he knew exactly where I slept. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe someone moved in. Maybe he was jet-lagged. Maybe he couldn't sleep. But the next night at exactly 2:13 a.m., the boy was there again. Same window, same posture, the same blank stare pointed directly at me. Something about him felt wrong. Not scary, just off, like he was too still, too quiet, too deliberate. The third night, I decided to get a closer look. I got out of bed and walked slowly to my window. The boy didn't move. His face was pale, almost colorless. His hair was dark and messy, sticking up in uneven tufts, and his eyes weren't looking at me. They were looking behind me. My breath caught in my throat as a chill ran down my spine. I whipped around, heart hammering, expecting someone, but my room was empty. When I turned back, the boy was gone. The light in 12B flicked off. I barely slept. The next morning, I decided to ask my building manager about the tenants across from me. "Oh, 12B, he said, tapping through some files. "No one lives there." "What?" I frowned. "There was a boy there last night, 3 nights in a row." He shook his head. 12B's been vacant for 6 months. The last tenant moved out after what happened. "What happened?" He hesitated. "Her son passed away." My stomach flipped. "How old was he?" 10, he said quietly. My mouth went dry. I left the office pretending I wasn't shaken, but the moment I got back to my unit, I closed all my curtains. I told myself it was just coincidence, stress, maybe a reflection. Maybe my brain is projecting shapes into shadows. That night, I went to bed early. At 2:13 a.m., my eyes snapped open. The cold was back. Slowly, I turned toward the window. The boy was there. This time, the boy was in closer proximity. Much closer. His hands pressed against the glass. His expression was time-sensitive. His mouth was moving silently, like he was trying to speak, but couldn't. I stumbled back from the window. "Stop," I whispered to myself. "You're seeing things." But then he raised his hand and motioned downward, like telling me to duck. I froze. He mouthed something again. 3 words. I didn't want to read them, but I did. He's behind you. My blood turned to ice. I spun around, expecting no, knowing I'd see someone in my room. Nothing. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands, turned the flashlight on, and scanned the room. Still nothing. When I turned back, the boy was gone. The window was dark. I didn't sleep at all. The next day, I marched straight to the leasing office. I need to see 12B, I demanded. Now. The manager frowned. It's empty. Then unlock it. He sighed but grabbed the keys. We walked across the courtyard and up the stairs. My heart pounded the whole way. The door creaked open with a long, sickening groan. The apartment was bare. Empty air. There was dust on the counters. There was no debris on the floor, no furniture, no boxes. There were no signs of life present. See, the manager said, nobody here. But there was something on the floor near the bedroom door. The object was a small dirty sock. A kid's sock. I picked it up with trembling fingers. There were letters written along the edge of the fading marker. Liam. I dropped it. That night, I didn't even pretend to sleep. I sat on my couch with all the lights on and the TV playing quietly, waiting for 2:13. At exactly that minute, the power cut out. My apartment went pitch black. The air turned ice cold. The hallway outside creaked softly. My heartbeat thundered as footsteps moved toward my door. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Something stopped right outside. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. One new text. Look at the window. My breath trembled as I turned. The boy from 12B was in my window. But this time, he wasn't staring at me. He was staring at my front door. His hands slammed against the glass, face twisted with panic. He mouthed, "Run." The doorknob began to turn. I didn't think. I didn't look back. I bolted through my bedroom, ripped open the fire escape window, and climbed down so fast my hands bled. I didn't stop running until I reached a gas station 3 blocks away and called the police. They searched my unit. No forced entry. No footprints. There was no indication that anyone had attempted to gain entry. Except for one thing. A wet footprint on my bedroom carpet. Small, child-sized, leading directly toward the window. I moved out the next morning. But occasionally when I wake up suddenly at 2:13 a.m., I swear the air feels cold again. And once, just once, when I lifted my curtain a little, I saw a boy's hand pressed against the glass of the building across the street. Like he followed me. Like he's still trying to warn me.